called Human Design.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it was like projectors, generators, and all that.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, but certain if you look into human design, it will tell you the actual type of foods you should eat. And some people are not supposed to eat cold foods, and some people are supposed to eat cold foods.
Mm-hmm.
Like for me, my body, I'm not supposed to eat cold foods. I'm supposed to eat hot foods. That's why I always have like teas, soups. I might go to like tassili's. I might get something like that's cold, but I might get something hot though. Anything cold does make me weaker, and that's what I realized. Yeah, because it'll tell you that your blood. It'll tell you what temperature your blood is. So if your blood is cold, you need hot foods. If your blood is hot, you need cold foods to offset that balance.
See, I'm warm. My body is usually warm all the time. Like
Okay,
anybody,
you probably need more juice, like juices and smoothies.
my body is
Yeah.
real hot. It can be cold outside. You can still feel my body is real hot. That's how you know that people. It's in one of Dr. York's publications. That's how you're able to delineate if a person has a soul or not. Feel their hands. You know what I'm saying? If it's hot and their hands is cold or whatever, like my body is always hot. It's hot. Like I'm not like sweating or I'm not sick or nothing, but that's just the thermal check. Like I said, that's what non-ether is. Electrical energy, thermodynamics, hydrodynamics, electromagnetic radiation, and resonant energy. So the thermodynamics is where the heating of the body, heating up the body by way of the carbon activation. So that's how you know if a person has a soul or not.
Yeah, and also can't you also tell mentally? You could just read them by the top of in their eyes. If you look in their eyes, you see like a glass. You don't really see too much soul, too much of like you know how people with a soul have an inner dialogue. If you don't just see that inner dialogue inside of them, there's something no one's home.
Yeah. Another thing, to where you are able to decipher if a person has a soul or not, you have 4 elements of the soul, which is thinking, reasoning, understanding, and willpower. Your willpower is your strength to get through certain things as far as like discipline. You know what I'm saying? You're able to think, meaning that you're able to comprehend what's going on, to where you're able to understand the dichotomy between good and evil. Understanding, you know what I'm saying, to where you understand a multitude of things that's connected to planet Earth. So it's like I said, when people don't have those 4 elements, that's how you know that they don't have a soul. Because your willpower is going to tell you get the will and get up and go do something with yourself. Go work out. You know what I'm saying? Go do something that's self-affirming or something that's constructive. That's how you know if a person has a soul or not. You got some people just, man, I ain't doing nothing. I just want to smoke this loud and drink this lean, bro. I'm out here.
Yeah. You feel like black people, you feel like black or melanated people have souls? Like there are you feel like some of them don't have souls?
Yet some of them don't. I'm gonna tell you why. In the inception point, some of them did, but they lost their soul because they became acclimated to the patriarchal standpoints of a patrilineal system, meaning that they conform to the system. They conform to everything around them. That's when you lose your soul as a so-called melanated man and melanated woman.
So you could lose your soul. You could lose your soul right now.
Some people say you can't. Some people say you don't. But I actually believe that because I've seen. Best way I can explain it. How you ever seen? This doesn't. I'm saying I'm not being racist and nothing. This has nothing to do with. But this is the reality. How you ever seen a black woman who dated nothing but white guys? Pay attention to her greater hair. Pay attention to her genetics. Pay attention to the way that she acts. Everything becomes compromised. She's no longer her. I ain't talking about the voice, but she's no longer her authentic self. She becomes artificial because some of those women, they start wearing contacts. They start wearing blonde weave. You know what I'm saying? You basically become something that you're not. That you're not basically, because you're taking up on the energetic frequency of a race that you're basically trying to please in a form of relationships. So you're basically seeking approval to where you're not even thinking about yourself. You become anti yourself because you're showing credence to another race. That's what an antichrist is. You anti yourself. You anti yourself. You lose your soul. You don't believe in yourself no more. You're not even tapped in to your true culture. You don't even want to tap into that energy. So a lot of times, it can, a lot of that energy, when it comes from women dealing with that type of energy, a lot of that stuff stems from childhood, because they probably grew up without a father. So now she resents black men to where she got to date other races of people in order to combat the lack thereof.
Right.
So that's where you got to tap into doing your shadow work. When you do your shadow work, that's when you subjugate the trauma, the inception that was cultivated in the inception of your childhood. So a lot of people's problems, and they lose their soul just based on the traumatic experiences that they had when they was a little child. Because, like I said, you become a product of your environment. So in order to get people, acclimated to the energy of the soul, you got to fix the environment up. You know what I'm saying? Make it more safe, a lot more culturally balanced to where they know who they are. That's how you fix certain things. It all starts with the household.
Mm-hmm. So we're gonna now answer some questions, y'all.
Okay.
If you guys want to ask a question, just go ahead and comment it, and we will, if it's compliant enough, we will answer it.
I can't even see no question. I don't even know who in the chat.
Okay, so I'll just bring it up. So this brother said, "What about the different races? We can't say they don't have a soul either."
Reason I say that, you got to understand the delineation between 6 ether and 9 ether. 9 ether is able to dematerialize into 6 ether, which is a form of nothingness. So 6 ether dematerializes into a ghost because it doesn't have the 9 ether. 9 ether is the foundation of all things in civilizations. The building block is carbon. Carbon is one of those things where if it breaks down, it becomes a lower form, because if you don't have carbon, it dematerializes into a form of a sulfur. Sulfur is actually unnatural. So when you're talking about 9 ether, or when you're talking about other races of people having souls or whatever, you got to look at it from a standpoint. Let's just use some type of logic. You think the people who run this planet have souls? Because the people who run this planet, as far as on a perceptual level, on the surface level of what you see on television, a lot of these people are mass murders. You know what I'm saying? They doing trafficking and things of that nature. These people don't have souls. You know what I'm saying? Running, tyrannical governments. That's not that's not a demographic of people who have souls. Because if you have a soul, that means that you have some type of humanity. All these people, all these plutocracies, the elites, they don't have no humanity. You know what I'm saying? So that's
you say humanity?
They don't have no humanity. They have no compassion.
Right.
They have no compassion.
Yeah.
There was a study that came out. They said that it was they said that all, I forgot what races that they said, but I know it wasn't black. They said that when they see people, when they walking down, their brain don't light up because they see certain when they walking down the street, when they with black people or whatever, like they brain don't light up. Like it doesn't activate the neural synapses to let you know that there's a black person sitting right there. They'll try to they literally won't even move. Like they'll try to walk through that person. Like their brain don't light up because they see black people as objects. So there was a study that that came out not too long ago, and it was basically saying that. So that's why I said that those are the 4 elements of the soul: thinking, reasoning, understanding, and willpower. You got to understand your humanity. You got to understand that these demographics of people are not, they're not objects. You know what I'm saying? You can't use them for exploitation purposes and also to activate your form of imperialism on the planet. You can't use them for that. You can't use them for capitalistic purposes. So that's how you know that, this system is being galvanized by people who don't have a soul. It's being facilitated by people who don't have a soul, because otherwise, capitalism wouldn't exist. Only reason capitalism exists is because of patriarchy. Patriarchy is the epitome of racism. So if people had a soul, it wouldn't be no racism, right?
Right.
So everybody don't have. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, we getting some super chats. I just seen them, y'all. Let me see how to do it. I don't know how to. Okay, so greetings. How do you train your expressive blue throat chakra? So she asked. I don't know how to highlight it, but she said, "How do you train your throat chakra?"
The best way is by way of the doctrine of signatures. The doctrine of signatures is acclimated to certain foods and certain herbs and or whatever, so where you can activate that chakra point, that energy cortex. So since blue is equated to the doctrine of signatures of blueberries, eat blueberries. Blueberries helps you activate your neurological faculties, activates the crown chakra to where you're able to think and speak, you know what I'm saying, speak truth. Helps you activate a state of consciousness.
Mm-hmm. This brother said, "BDELL, I have only dated white women in the past. As a black male, I am lost." I
No, I'm
know
gonna
a
tell
few
you something.
brothers. I know a few brothers as well who've only dated white women. Yeah.
No, I'm gonna tell you, you know what I'm saying, just because you lay down with certain, see, everybody, you know what I'm saying, um by way of indoctrination and by way of things that's being facilitated by the television networking system, a lot of that stuff, you know what I'm saying, doesn't mean that you're lost. Everybody is subjugated by the matrix, on some level. You know what I'm saying? Like, just because, you know what I'm saying, you lay down with other species of people don't mean that you're not chosen. You know what I'm saying? Some people, like, they was really like, that's all they saw. That was the environment they was in. It's kind of like a black kid. He grew up in an all-white neighborhood and he went to an all-white school. What do you expect him to date? That's the environment that he was, forcibly put in because his parents have a good job or something like that. And there's no other, that's all he sees. And, you know what I'm saying? And don't let him be good at basketball and football. And he, you know what I'm saying, you're in high school, you know what I'm saying, you're around all that, you're going to be subjected to dating outside of your race because that's all you know by way of your environment. And the inception of the problem comes from the parents not knowing who they truly are by way of their culture. They don't know their true culture. Because a lot of black people who make a lot of money, as far as working in Fortune 500 companies, a lot of them, they don't understand their true history. Some of them, they just kind of just like, they got the good job and that's it. So it's the one to like, so it ain't your fault if that's something that you was acclimated to since you was a child, you know what I'm saying? But you can do course correction, you know what I'm saying? You can correct that, you know what I'm saying, if you really, tapped into it, because it tells you all throughout. I'm gonna get to the question in a minute, but it tells you all throughout many different sacred tablets or whatever, or many different historical books, that it don't matter if you white, black, Chinese, or whatever, you're supposed to stick to your race, because they said that race mixing causes confusion.
Yeah, and also when you look at it on an ancestral level, if you're dating a white person, they have, white ancestors. Their ancestors were slave catchers, where our ancestors was, warriors. So then on an ancestral level, we already know that we walk with our ancestors.
Here's another thing, though. Some of the blacks were slave catchers. That's where the black nobility comes in.
Yeah,
so it's not actually just subjected to the infiltration of white people. So because you got to understand the inception of genetics. Some of the first people who gave the edification to the European were black people. That is your black nobility. How do they know how to use religion to subjugate the seeds of Enki? How do they know how to use genetic manipulation? How do they know how to use weather modification? They learned those from higher entities. How do they do that? You know what I'm saying? So it's not one of those things where, they just, the European just woke up and learned how to do everything. Somebody melanated that's connected to the cherubim, the 200 fallen angels that came to this planet and met it with the daughters of man who are the Canaanite. Revelation 17:17, El's holy and Jill, the evil reptilian gave power to the beast. The beast is the Canaanite. The reptilian is the draconian reptilian factions of the cherubim, the 200 fallen angels, or the Nephilim, connected to the seeds of Enlil. So what I'm saying is, those factions are actually shape-shifting black people, shape-shifting blacks who are able to manipulate certain things behind the scenes by giving the European power in the third dimension. That's what is basically going on. So it's not only subjected to the fact that, you know, you got to get out of this aspect of, oh, white people doing this. No, white people are being told by black people that you don't see. It's called the black hand, the unseen hand.
Yeah, I seen the picture you posted, BDELL, and you did show that. You showed a bunch of black people. They were actually with the Illuminati, and I'm like, they are part of the Illuminati too. So it shows that, yeah, you know, that's
the
the type of time.
European, the Asian, the Caucasian, the Asian, Caucasian, the East Indian, the ones who control like governments on the three-dimensional level, they are just the face of what you see controlling the whole infrastructure of government. But behind the scenes, they are melanated ones called the black nobility who control them.
Wow.
That's why when I did my history, everybody that you've seen that was actually Caucasian, as far as like Beethoven or all these colonizers, there were actually melanated ones. So there's doubles. You got a melanated one, you have a European one. So that's how they hide.
Our own people, bro.
So, but that's the thing though. They not really our people. They the seeds of the enemy.
Right.
So, like I said, you have two different bloodlines of so-called blacks on the planet. Seeds of Enki, seeds of Enlil.
Yeah, so can you if you do a super chat, we will answer your question. So we got this question and we have another super chat. So how do you feel about monatomic gold? I have used it a few times and it definitely does help to kind of open up and decalcify that pineal gland. So it makes your intuition. If you want to activate your clears, get some atomic gold. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. One thing about anything about gold in general, gold is a intrinsic metal. So when you look at the periodic table of elements, the nomenclature title for gold is AU. AU is short for aura. So when you tap into eating monatomic gold or using monatomic gold, that is basically an elixir to activate your energetic morphic field, which is the foundation of your auric field. So your aura is acclimated to the energy of gold. So that's why that back during the inception of time, when you're talking about these ancient kings or whatever, they wore a lot of gold because gold was highly conductive. It's a superconductor. So that's when you look at some of the slaves, they always had the gold teeth. Gold teeth is acclimated to our culture because gold contains a positive electrical frequency to where when you speak in a certain octave vibration, it collaborates with the ethers because your aura is connected to the planet. So gold is a superconductor to where you can activate a form of manifestation because gold is highly magnetic, right? So now this goes into the fact that all ancient Semitic language, all ancient Moabite language is connected to the alphabetical symmetry of light. So when that light, that tetrahedron, is collaborated with the octave frequency of gold, right, that activates everything that's highly magnetic around you. So that's why it's imperative to understand that as far as speaking the English language is actually acidic to the body, right? So the European Albion dialect is acidic to the body because it contains sulfur. Our natural language is actually conducive to the body because it's highly magnetic because it contains carbon and silicone. So gold, when you understand the elements, when you understand creation, you will know that gold is a superconductor for manifestation purposes, and it's a superconductor to protect your aura.
Yes, it protects against all types of sorcery. Mm-hmm. Wow, that is powerful right there. Got this super chat. I just want to say shout out to the both of you for using your voice and insight to assist others on their path. I'm unlearning and learning so much from you both. Looking forward to us implementing. I say 5.
Thank you, Queen.
Appreciate you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Will sleeper cells be activated this year? What is that?
Sleeper cell is basically a form of military factions that's coming in due to the expansion of borders. So border expansion is where you start letting in all these foreign entities, and a lot of them are connected to the United Nations military, or they're just connected to the military of external forces when you're talking about Iran, Russia, and China and things of that nature. So these sleeper cells also work in tandem with the CIA. The CIA is connected to the deep state shadow government, and the deep state shadow government in itself is connected to these secret alphabetical groups within our government by way of democracy. So the sleeper cells, they have the ability to be activated because they need a false flag event to take place to basically create this whole dynamic of a reset as we're going through a planetary reset. So sleeper cells, I say within now, not now, I say in between from March 25th all the way up until 2026. In between that time is going to be a sleeper cell activation.
Okay. Yeah, we got a lot of comments, y'all. So we're not getting to your comments. So it's only so many comments, y'all. It's all love though, but there's only so many comments. So we're just doing our best. Just know that. So trying to look for another comment. And it's about like probably 10 more.
We got to close shop in a minute because I got to get my little one from school.
Okay. Yeah, we're gonna get like one or two more, y'all. So okay. BDELL, is it true that black nobility resides in the desert in Morocco, and they answer to highly correct?
This is my first time coming across this information, so I'm not sure.
Okay.
But I know as far as like some of the black nobility, when you understand like the historical context of Moorish history, Morocco is basically in West Africa, Fez, Morocco, which is where you get the whole concept of wearing a fez. So that's when you get the whole mythology of the fez versus feathers, because a lot of the blackamoors came from West Africa, and then a lot of them came over here, and then that's when you get your whole concept of the black Spanish conquistadors who actually came over here with missionaries, and they subjugated the land with ecclesiastical law, which is a canon law, and the canon law, which makes the church and the state not separate, which is a corporate internal code, which is commercial law. So commercial law is acclimated to the religion. So they came over here with the religion and took us out of our land. That's how they did it.
Okay. All right, we got two more questions. This is second. As far as the black nobility and the reptilian species, do you know how these two species interact? Which ones have to leave this planet?
As I told you before, the black nobility are basically shape-shifting black people. That's where you get your whole mythology of watch the movie Vampire in Brooklyn. Watch the movie Vampire in Brooklyn and watch the first, I think it's like in the beginning of the movie, it tells you how they was exiled from Egypt and they was exiled from Babylon, because the first species on the planet, we all know, like I said, by way of genetics and by Mendel's law, you get the recessive from the dominant. You don't get the dominant from the recessive. So that means that it were black people here. You had two different bloodlines of so-called blacks that was here. So the seeds of Enlil, they were actually shapeshifters, black people. Shapeshifter, or what you call them, a Draconian, or a Draconian, a Draco, Dracula. They all work in tandem. So when you watch the movie Vampire in Brooklyn, it's going to give you the historical reference of how they was exiled out of certain places, because Draconians, when you become a fallen one is connected to planet Saturn. Saturn is equated to a nomad. You don't have a homeland. So since you don't have a homeland, you're not connected to the planet. The seeds of Enki are connected to the planet. The seeds of Enlil, because his name means the Satan as being the prince of air. He's actually Lord of the sky, Lord of the simulation, Lord of the third dimension, Lord of the firmament. So what I'm saying is, those factions or whatever, those black nobility, draconians or whatever you want to call them, they're actually shapeshifters. So it's not a coincidence that Dracula comes from the word Draco. That's what a vampire is a shape-shifting reptilian. Watch the movie Blade. They tell you in that movie too.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. All right, so last question. A lot of people want to know some of the books, recommended books. I think you explained some books earlier.
Well, I got one right here. If you want to know about the deep state, read this book right here, Deep State. I'm you know what I'm saying, I went back to this. I got this book like 5 years ago. Talks about, you know, Donald Trump, FBI, and the rule of law. Get the book Autonomy. Autonomy will unlock the esoteric codes of the Uniform Commercial Codes, and it tells you how it works in connection with the 1724 Black Christian codes, and it tells you the dynamics of how religion is actually a form of patriarchy that takes you out of your sovereign capacity. Also, what's another book? The Secret Ages of All Teachings. I'm reading that. I use it as a reference book. What else is another book? Holy Tablets. I always recommend that by Dr. York.
That's still a book I got to read.
Yeah, but I'm gonna do another video soon. I'm gonna do a video that's breaking down all the books that's connected to the timeline that we live in here.
Okay.
To where you have a supreme understanding about what's taking place. So I'm gonna do another video on that pretty soon.
Okay. But yeah, without further ado, guys, you know, I really appreciate you guys for joining in with this collaboration with BDELL1014. Make sure you guys go ahead and subscribe to him, and if you guys are new to my channel, subscribe to me as well. We do a lot of collabing with conscious community and personal information as well, self learning about yourself, whether that's through numerology, astrology, all types of self-discovery. All right.
I think you spelled my name wrong too in the title. It's got 2 L's.
Okay, 2 L's. Let me fix that right now.
It's BDELL1014.
Okay. All right.
Second. We're gonna wait till we get a few more people in the chat. Wait till we hit about 250 until we start the demonstration. But this transmission is basically dedicated to the gathering of the masters, which was basically a small fraction of the galvanization of the 144,000. So a lot of people who went to the event, they had a really good experience, and the great majority of the experience, it was kind of like one of those things where you had the great majority of people from the whole infrastructure of the conscious community, and we were just all in one big lump sum in one big event, and it turned out to be great. You had me, KT, the Arch Degree, Asir Ducateers. You had Black Dot. You had Professor Griff. You had the great majority of everybody that basically drops the gems when it comes to this Great Awakening process. So shout out to Brother Rich. He did his thing with that whole event. And in my opinion, I think he should, you know, take that event and do it on the West Coast, do one on the South, do one in the Midwest, and do one out up north on the East Coast. So we also going to get into some Q&A, and me and Rod Hayes, we have a demonstration that's coming up, and we're going to be talking about the conjuration process of blood magic and how it's tied and connected to the infrastructure of the socio-political aspect of civics. When you're talking about Babylonian blood magic and Babylonian sex magic, Babylonian money magic. So we're going to be talking about that. Me and Rod Hayes got a lot of receipts that basically propagates the intrinsic information. So we're going to wait till we get some more people in before we start out. We're going to wait till we hit about 500. So if you will, share the live on whatever social media platform that you got. That way, you know what I'm saying, we can get the edification out. And we're also going to be talking about do a lot of Q&A. And the reason I don't, you know, a lot of people have been asking me why I don't have my original backdrop is because I'm getting some electrical work done in my house. So right now I'm going to be down, you know, doing stuff in the front room and stuff and things of that nature. But yes, me and Rod Hayes definitely got something going on coming up in the near future. Next Thursday, we're going to do a broadcast. We're going to be talking about many different things when it comes to this Great Awakening process, because a lot of people are very much confused when it comes to the political infrastructure. We're going to be talking about the whole process of the restoration of the matriarch, and we're going to show publications and documents that basically supports that claim. So, like I said, man, hit that like, hit that subscribe button. Hold on for a second. And I might put some people up here, you know what I'm saying, to ask questions. I'm not sure. I might just keep it on an autonomous level. But when we get to the Q&A, the first questions that's going to be asked is the private chats or the super chats. Those are the first ones that's going to be mandated. But yeah, gathering of masses, very good turnout. I had a good time. And it was one of those things, I've never been to a big event like that when it came to the conscious community. And that whole process in itself was, I was overstimulated, because not in a bad way or a negative way. I'm just saying I was overstimulated because I wasn't, you know, I was surprised on how many people showed up to the whole gathering. And it was one of those things where a lot of people, you got to experience that whole event that took place. It was something magical. It was something very intrinsic. It was something very revolutionary that took place. And the energy, you know what I'm saying, they had like a Wakanda energy to it, you know what I'm saying? So it was a very good turnout. Very good turnout. So when you're talking about the context of so-called Black excellence, that was basically the precursor to that, of what you've seen at Black Wall Street at the Gathering of the Masses in Atlanta, Georgia. It was phenomenal. It was a very good turnout. We had people coming from everywhere. You had a guy, he flew in from Iraq. You had people from Utah. You had people who drove all the way from, you know, back home in New York City. You had people from Chicago, Detroit. You had people from everywhere. You know what I'm saying? And like I said, this Great Awakening process, you know, what took place was not a coincidence. The Lionsgate portal had just opened up, and the Lionsgate portal was open until August 15th or the 17th, I believe. So it was not a coincidence that that energy portal pulled in all this, you know, this intrinsic vibration and put everybody in one landmass. So it was very powerful, very powerful. You had Queen Afua, you had Sister Myra Moss, you had Soleil, you had a lot of people there that was, you know, propagating the knowledge for years. So it feels very good to be included with those individuals when it comes to the Gathering of the Masses. I think the last one was in 2018, and they also have, you can look up some of the ones in the past. They had the ones with Bobby Hemmett. It was some, there was also, I think Dr. Khalid Muhammad was also a part of the Gathering of the Masters. So like I said, it was a very good turnout. And for me, like I said, I'm very introverted. So it's one of those things where, you know, when it comes to events like that, like I said, I was very much overstimulated, but in a good way. So, and me and Yaki Awakening, me and him, we have a demonstration and a transmission we're going to be putting together here pretty soon. And I talked to him not too long ago after the Gathering of the Masses. So me and Yaki, we got something coming up pretty soon. Me and Rod Hayes, we got something dropping next Thursday. Some heavy receipts talking about the blood oath secrecy in the Draconian Constitution, on how they propagate Babylonian blood magic within the infrastructure of their political system and how they use those organizations to extract the energy of the chosen people on the planet. But yeah, we can get into some Q&A, man. Like I said, first questions that's going to be asked are the ones that send in super chats. Okay, we got one right here. How are you preparing for the deities to surface? Like I said, when you get into the whole aspect of the Christ consciousness, they said that the chosen ones is going to have a seal on their forehead, right? And that's basically the embodiment of the activation of the scroll of all. The scroll of all is your chakra system. So when you unlock the seventh seal within you, these entities that live in the lower fourth dimension that don't take corporeal form, they won't be able to attack you because you have that Christ energy, you have the Christ consciousness, right? And I believe it's in Revelations, it doesn't talk about the return of the so-called Jesus, the return of the return of the Christ energy. So when you tap into that interstellar gateway of the halls of Amenti and you do your shadow work and you tap into the process of self-realization, that's when you're able to embark upon those frequencies to where nothing can infiltrate your cipher because you'll be spiritually protected, basically. That's what it's all about. So you got to level up from a mental standpoint. And a lot of people, when it comes to the conscious community, a lot of people get this whole perception and this ideology that everything has to just be so spiritual. Like I said, it's not all about crystals and head wraps and the aesthetic of looking spiritual. It's one of those things where you have to, this is what I call the level up. When you're going through that process of leveling up on a physical level, I call it the prison mindset. So sometimes you got to use the matrix in order to get out, because it's all based upon the fact that you have to go through this process of, you know, solitude, and solitude puts you in a state of tunnel vision. Tunnel vision is the interstellar portal that helps you get to the gateway of your level up. So you got to activate that prison mentality in a form of liberation, meaning that you have to lock yourself down and be grounded to where you basically create this process on how, when you studying, just like when people in jail, they get to studying and they work on themselves, they work on their body. You got to create that form of equilibrium. Because like I said, you know, if you work out more than you read, you still out of shape, right? And if you read more than you work out, you're still out of shape. So you got to cultivate the balance. So you see a lot of people when they go to prison, a lot of them, you know what I'm saying, their spirit is right. You know what I'm saying? They working on themselves. They doing their push-ups. They doing their edification. They in the law library to get the understanding about the civics and the politics and how to free themselves, right? So the great majority of people, man, that's what it's all about. It's all about leveling up on the mental level. So I'm gonna get to another question. I keep hearing. I'm not sure what that is, but I can get back to this question if you give me some type of some context to it. I guess he didn't have nothing to say, but I appreciate the super chat. All right, we're gonna get to some more questions. But the level up in itself is all about working on yourself. You can't just be so subjected to, you know, relying on crystals and relying on things that basically doesn't really have intrinsic value. You can always upgrade your physiology. You know what I'm saying? That's what it's all about. Upgrade the mental and upgrade your body. So that's where we want to shift the whole paradigm when it comes to that mindset. Trying to get to the questions, but it's not showing me nothing. Okay. Like I said, we going to answer some questions. Okay, I think we got another super chat here. What would be attacked by the deities and physical third? Now, I just answered the question. When you're talking about the infiltration of these archonic forces that don't take corporeal form, what's happening is it's one of those things where the whole process is all about upgrading your mental faculties to where you're no longer subjected by the holonomic brain theory, which is the conscious energy grid that tethered connects you to the grid system of third density. So soon as you think outside the box, that's what they're talking about. Because when you look at the geometrical shape of planet Earth, when you're talking about the platonic solids, a hexahedron is basically the embodiment of planet Earth because it's made up of carbon, right? So in order to break out of that mental prison, right, because we are light body trapped inside of a light prism, which is a prison. So when you break free mentally, that's when you're able to tap into the higher dimensions for astral travel and things of that nature. So like I said, these entities that don't take corporeal form, they won't be able to attack you because your frequency is so high. So this is the same concept when you see something, when you see molecules and atoms, and when they speed up in vibration, it basically extracts the negative energy. So that's what planet Earth is actually doing. Anything that's basically cancerous to the planet is getting extracted, right? So that's what the Great Awakening process, when you're talking about the galactic shift, right? Because we all know when you understand and you study the perceptual circle of the equinox, the Draconian star constellation was basically controlling everything under the Draconian constitution by way of the Piscean energy, the Taurus energy, and the Aries energy, which is the age of mankind. And the age of mankind was basically the clay age. The clay age is the embodiment of the lunar cycle, right? Because when you get to the inception point of the first sun cycle, right, everything was matriarchal. Everything was facilitated by a republic. And a republic is for the people. So that's why the United States government, right, is a corporation. Uniform Commercial Code, Title 18, Section 3002. The United States of America denotes ownership of a certain demographic of people, which is why you call a citizen, meaning that you're basically a municipal slave to the demonstrative government. So that's why I said it's imperative to understand civics, because it works in tandem with metaphysics and spirituality. Because if you don't know one, you don't know the other, right? So, do you have any future? Let me see what Catalea said. He said, do you have any future books? I'm actually gonna put out a big publication. It's gonna be one big book, and it's gonna be called The Sacred Book of the Chosen. And it's gonna be one of those books where it's gonna be like it's gonna be an ontological artifact. It's gonna be something that you want to keep, because the way I'm gonna present it is gonna look like a big sacred book, like some Harry Potter type shit. It's gonna be a really nice. The presentation is gonna look really good. So when I put that book out, it's really gonna give you the steps of self-realization and how to do, ancient Kemetic rituals on how to tap into the chosen one energy. So I got that coming out probably at the top of next year. And I'm going to get some, eventually some shirts made too in the future. So let me see. But yeah, the shirt go crazy. Yeah, shout out to the master teacher, Nobuju Ali, who was doing his edification to free the people by way of the Moorish paradigm. Let me see. We got some more questions. Like I said, a lot of people don't be wanting me to go live. And now that I go live, ain't nobody got no questions. Because like I said, this is one of those things you can ask me anything. What are your thoughts on voting? Should we vote? Okay. My bad. It's not the right question. Okay. Just me and Rod Hayes, we talked on the phone for about 3 hours yesterday. And when you understand that voting, this is what they do when it comes to democracy. Democracy is a form of the extraction of Babylonian blood magic. Because when you participate in fraud, you can't claim injury to the system, right? So the injury in itself is the Babylonian blood magic that is facilitated by the Jesuit oath, right? And the Jesuit oath is being facilitated and galvanized by the Khazars, and the Khazars are the Ukrainian mafia, right? Because when you look at the Khazarian Tamda the Khazarian Tamga is the same as the Ukrainian crest, which is the sigil of Lucifer. So these beings who run the whole corporate infrastructure of democracy is basically derived from ancient Babylon, right? So democracy in itself, this is why they propagate this is why they propagate voting to black people when it comes to democracy, because democracy is the epitome of black degradation. They're not for reconstruction. You don't get restitution, reparations. You don't get justice within the factions of democracy and liberalism, right? Because as I was telling you before, you got to study etymology. Where does the word democracy come from? It means demonic rulership. When you look at the suffix of the word krasi, it means kratos. Kratos is father time, right? Because we're trapped in time. We're trapped in an artificial time analysis mechanism. We're trapped in a time loop of consciousness to where you can't think outside the box, right? Because when you look at planet Saturn, they have the cube of Saturn on top. And the cube of Saturn extracts subatomic particles of energy, right? To where you're subjected to the energy extraction matrix. So planet Earth is basically a loose farm to extract the energy of the chosen ones and the chosen people who belong to this planet, right? That's what it's all about. So fasting is another way to speed up your vibration. But I'm going to get back to the voting thing, though, because like I said, voting is how voting and reparations and things of that nature is the carrot on the stick. That's what it is. It's a trap. It's another way to trap you to the artificial construct of democracy, right? So all this stuff, like I said, if you don't understand the historical context of where democracy came from, because the demo system in 1833 was being engineered by the secret treaty of Verona. That was the inception point of when patriarchy basically reversed the polarity of a republic and transmuted the matriarch into a patriarchal civilization. That's what it was all about. That's what the secret treaty of Verona was all about, right? That's how they infiltrated us. That's how they created ecclesiastical law. That's the embodiment of their system. So when you vote, you're voting yourself right back into the caste system of democracy, right? Which makes you non-descendable because you don't have no type of political allegiance, right? Because when you have political allegiance, that ties you to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, that tells you to the Indigenous People Act, because your etheric cord connects you to the planet, which gives you a nationality, because the word nationality comes from the word nativity. Nativity is your birthright to the planet, right? Which is why when you're talking about the headdress of a Moor, we wear the fez. The fez is a funnel of energy, and the tassel represents 720 degrees of knowledge. That 720 degrees of knowledge is equated to the fact that your etheric cord, the etheric frequency, is what connects you to this land. Because in the beginning of the precessional circle of the equinox, the sun cycle, right? It was a fifth dimensional civilization. Everything was based on etheric energy, right? And you write about that. They use your voting. That voting is the voltage. They use it. It's an energy extraction. But like I said, it's one of those things where they have to galvanize the, how can I say it? The blacks who are indoctrinated. They have to galvanize those individuals in order to create this illusion. They want to keep the loop going. That's what it's all about. But like I said, just like I told Rod Hayes last night, you cannot have a democracy in a matriarch, because the matriarch is the embodiment of the sun cycle, right? That's what it's all about. When the sun cycle, everything that's being controlled by the sun cycle is matriarchal. Matriarchal civilizations were fifth dimensional civilizations. This is why you had Tartaria, you had Atlantis, the land of Mu, right? I'm gonna get to this. I appreciate you, Queen. Appreciate the love. Shout out to you. I appreciate that. You know what I'm saying? Don't let them harvest your energy to propagate voting. Okay. Now we're going to get to this. Now, when you understand the diametrical difference between the eukaryotic cell and the prokaryotic cell, a eukaryotic cell is basically the epitome of splice genetics, right? When you have splice genetics, that means that you don't have the mitochondrial DNA that connects your etheric cord to the planet. So that means that you don't have a soul, you have a spirit, right? So when the spirit energy is being facilitated by the moon, the prokaryotic cell is the embodiment of prokaryotes, which is the first organism in the universe. That's within the infrastructure of the physiology of the Black woman's genetics, right? So everybody doesn't have that mitochondrial DNA. Everybody doesn't have it. But it's one of those things where when it comes to the draconian juice, when it comes to many different things that subjugates and puts an encryption on your anatomy, it's a reverse of frequency to where it basically extracts and transmutes the prokaryotic cell to a eukaryotic cell. So that's why I say you got indigenous people living in an unnatural system, right? Because it changes up your physiology. If you was at the Gathering of the Masters, Dr. Ju Pukum, she was talking about putting a cast on your physiology. That's what this system does, right? Which is basically an encryption. She didn't go too deep into it, but when you're talking about a cast on your physiology, you're basically talking about the lunar light lock frequency that locks down your DNA, right? Because we all know that technological devices basically puts an encryption on your anatomy. That's what technology does. It locks down DNA to where you're not able to unlock those codons, right? Because when you unlock those codons, what happens? It connects you to the space-time continuum to where you're able to reverse the polarity of the conscious energy grid on the planet that basically dematerializes the grid system. So the more you wake up, the more it's going to activate the sun, and it's going to activate the sun within you because we are connected to the planet etherically. So let's get to, I got some super chats in here. Let me see. Appreciate the Queen sending out the 777 energy. And what are your thoughts on Brazil plane crash? So like I said, I only live about 5 hours away from Atlanta, Georgia. So no, I did not, get on no airplane. I'm not going nowhere I can't travel to. If I don't have control of my own destiny, you know what I'm saying, I'm not able to operate behind the wheel, I'm not going nowhere. But when it comes to, that plane crash, like I said, it's inevitable that the grid is going to shut down. And it's not only subjected to, plane crashes and things of that nature. If you have any type of nanotechnology within your physiology, all they got to do is, hit that big red button and it's going to shut down your whole physiology. There's a commercial that they put out maybe about a few years ago, and they were basically talking about, it basically demonstrated on how everybody just dropped dead when the grid went down. Right? Anybody ever seen that commercial? If you seen that commercial, put 888 to pay homage to the Lionsgate portal energy, because it's still here. So if you've seen that, put 888 in there in the chat. But that commercial basically demonstrated that. So we all know that the World Economic Forum said it's inevitable that the grid is going to go down, because we know that the far right bureaucratic system of the Republican Party, they are basically the epitome of a totalitarian government. So a totalitarian government is the precursor to a cybernetic dictatorship. So that's based on transhumanism. So they want to turn this system into a transhumanistic system. So that's why they came out. They're coming out with a movie on August 30th called Afraid, but it's really talking about the propagation of artificial intelligence, right? Because one thing you got to understand about artificial intelligence is basically a form of energy extraction, because artificial intelligence, all it does is the technological radiation extracts the neurons from your body and it uploads it into a neuromorphic cyber cloud. And when it's uploaded into a neuromorphic cyber cloud, that's when the archons can mimic the energy of the chosen people on the planet, because when it comes to the archonic forces, they don't have the ability to create because they don't have a soul, right? You can only create if your etheric cord is connected to the heart chakra. So they don't have, emotional feelings and things of that nature when you're talking about the archons, right? So that's why they use technology, artificial intelligence to extract the energy to mimic humans, mimic the chosen ones, mimic the indigenous people. That's what that's all about, right? Because, like I said, this is an energy extraction matrix. This is a better simulation of reality, right? That is being controlled by a holographic system that's being propagated by the magneto-hydrodynamic ascending gaps on the rings of Saturn that creates this holographic projection that's being extracted from Saturn and the moon. That's why they call it the Saturn moon matrix, right? Let me see. Let me get some more questions. But yeah, that's what this is all about. The more you wake up is going to break the spell. And that spell is the fermented dome. We're in the quarantine zone. That is where you're talking about the spiritual cutoff when you go to the book of Genesis in the Bible. That spiritual cutoff is what cut off your magnetism, right? MAG, right? When you look at the word magic, your magic is your magnetism. When you tap into the magnetism, this is where you can do psychometry, clairvoyance, levitation, telepathy. That's when you can tap into those energies. But as long as they got that fermented dome up, right, that is basically the embodiment of the spiritual cutoff. It's a technology that created that whole infrastructure for the archons. So we're going to get to some more questions. Let me see. We can get into some gang stalking because the more you see, the more, hold on. But free the bro, Rashad Jamal. I think I can't even find the question now. But it's a super track question. Cares to expand on the fascia. Yeah, Yaki, he touched on the fascia nervous system, right? So one thing, when it comes to the fascia nervous system, is connected to the neuromelanin by way of the melanocytes, which are basically intelligence molecules, because neuromelanin is the brain central nervous system melanin that activates the piezoelectrical frequency within the 7 energy cortexes of your chakra system, right? So the electrical energy has a piezoelectrical frequency because we know when you understand the physiology of the indigenous people, they have magnetites and dendrites in the brain, which creates an influx of neurotransmitters and crystals to where you activate the Christ consciousness, right? So the fascia nervous system is basically the electrical force field that is basically around your whole nervous system. And your nervous system is basically the embodiment of your energetic morphic field. So the nervous system is basically the remote control to your whole energy field. That's what it's basically talking about, right? I can't go into that too much because me and Yaki, we was talking about that because that's when he breaks it down from a dietary standpoint. That's where I'm going to come in with the metaphysics, right? So I don't want to get too deep into that transmission too yet. So let me see. Like I said, I'm up here. Y'all can ask me anything. We finna talk about everything tonight. Anything you want to talk about, brother? What is the 3 things you've been doing every day to level up? This is what I do. What I do, I always, first thing first, I write down my goals with a pencil. If I'm at my girl's house, that's different. I don't have, I ain't got my pencils and my notepad and stuff. But if I'm at home, first thing I do when I wake up is when whatever I was dreaming about, I use a pencil. I don't use pen. I don't put it on a computer or nothing like that. You use a pencil because graphene, well, graphite is a derivative of carbon. So this is a form of, from a metaphysical standpoint. So when you write down your goals, when you want to write down something, it's going to put you in a state of tunnel vision, because the graphite energy, which is a derivative of carbon, it has a certain frequency to it to where it's able to manipulate the ethers. So that's one thing that I do. I write down my manifestations. Like I said, I go to the gym, I go in that steam room. A lot of, like I said, you got to look at, you can't be, when it comes to this great awakening process, you can't be one dimensional. Get massages, you know what I'm saying? Because we got energy blockages on our physiology. Go in the gym, go to the steam room, go to a sauna. You know what I'm saying? This is another way to upgrade yourself to where you don't have those energy blockages and those brain falls, to where you can tap into the apex of consciousness, right? That's what it's all about. It's like I said, it's not all about just meditating every day and with your crystals. You really got to do some work. You got to go through a process of self-realization, right? That's when you get into the spirit of Melchizedek. As I was telling y'all before, I already broke that whole thing down, right? It's all about self-realization. Oh yeah, another thing that I do, like I said, I read every day. Like I said, you work out more than you read, you're still out of shape. Like I said, you gotta make time. I don't care if it's 30 minutes a day. Make time to, understand whatever you want to study, right? That's what it's all about. We can't just be watching YouTube videos. You got to become a scholar, and be careful of what you're reading. Because a lot of times you got to study them in order to understand what's going on. Because the great majority of the books that I got, it's all talking about satanic worship. I got grimoire books. I got occultic books. I got books by Pascal Beverly Randolph. I got books talking about the Rastafarians. I got books that's talking about all types of shit. But like I said, in order to facilitate the knowledge, you got to understand the enemy intuitively, right? Let me see. Y'all got any more questions? Let me see. So like I said, you got to tap into the form of equilibrium, because what is equilibrium? Equilibrium is balancement, and balancement is God, right? You can't tap into the God frequency until you level up. Let me see. Okay, the red star and the blue star. The red star and the blue star, this is basically a part of the propagation when it comes to the Holy Tablets by Dr. Malachi York, Freedom Master Teacher. And the red and the blue star are basically coming from the tri-solar system of planet Risk. So this is also acclimated to the Hopi prophecy when you're talking about the red star Kachina and the blue star Kachina, right? And the red star Kachina has the ability to go through a process of a supernova. This is why they come out with the movie Beetlejuice. I broke this down about the red sun and the blue sun in the last transmission that I put out when you're talking about the 888 Lionsgate portal, right? Because they know that this planet is going through a form of mastery. And we're also going to have another 88 portal coming up when I think it's August 26, 2024. That's another 888. Right? And these portals is basically a funnel of energy, right? It's a funnel of gamma radiation that's hitting the planet that's manipulating the simulation. That's when you get an interface transition. So when you have interface transitions, right, when you get these energies from the blue sun and the red sun, these energies is causing a vibrational frequency on the planet to where people are starting to have deja vu. They starting to have things like the Mandela effect. When the conscious energy grid system is being manipulated, that's when people have all that, forms of deja vu. That's what happens. Because the grid system is being manipulated. Exactly. You got another 888 coming up. Right? Because when you understand that the universe is mathematical, right? The universe is mathematical, and you can show and prove by way of that through gematria or Vedic gematria. Because this holographic universe that we're living in is being facilitated by the energy of the moon, which is a quantum satellite. It's an artificial celestial megastructure that has a supercomputer that controls the simulation. So that's why everything you do on this planet is a form of a soul trap, right? You love food so much to the point it basically takes over your emotions. Soul trap. You love religion and Jesus so much to the point where it takes over your emotions.